Everyone can hear okay? All right, I'm Cindy Meyer. I am with CEFS. We cover 7 of the central counties in the COC. So we're the hosting, and I just wanted to do a few things. Make sure you guys know the restrooms are here in the back. If you haven't already registered, please make sure you go to the table back there and register. There are also donuts and fruit and coffee and juice and milk up there, over there, if you need a snack or a little breakfast. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. So thank you everyone for coming. And our first presenter is Karen Yepsen. She is with the statewide referral network. Take it away.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Karen Yepsen. At CSH, we always like to introduce ourselves by giving our pronouns. So my pronouns are she and her. I'm from the Corporation of Supportive Housing. Our offices are based in Chicago, Illinois, but I'm actually the only CSH staff member that's located right down here in central Illinois. And my service area is central and southern Illinois. So I am just so happy to have the opportunity to be here today and join you and talk to you a little bit about the statewide referral network and the work we do at CSH. So let me see. I'm not very tech savvy. I have my presenter here helping me out, but let's see if we can get this thing moving. There we go. So we're going to talk a little about the Corporation for Supportive Housing and the statewide referral network today. And please, if you have questions, raise a hand, jump in. I like to make this informal because I'm just not a great presenter. So the plan today is to talk a little bit about CSH. And to give you a little bit of a context of housing in general and why we are where we are with supportive housing. I also want to give you a little bit of an overview of affordable and supportive housing. So we're going to do a little affordable supportive housing 101. And then I'm going to talk to you about the statewide referral network because that is my main reason for wanting to meet you all today. Because I am hoping that you will join me as a service partner in helping folks connect to housing through the statewide referral network as one of our service partners. So CSH, who are we and what do we do? We are a national nonprofit consulting firm. So we have teams across the country. Illinois happens to have one of the largest teams, and our focus is primarily on housing development and the statewide referral network. So our areas of focus include training and education. We have hundreds of webinars and webinar series available through our website on supportive housing. They're great trainings. We have a national training center that puts all of our trainings together. And I would really strongly encourage you to check it out because there's just an awful lot of information available out there to help you support the people that you serve. We also have a lending arm, which is pretty extensive. So we actually provide financing for developments primarily with BIPOC developers. We're very focused on racial equity at CSH. And so our lending, the purpose of our lending arm is to make sure that we're making equitable distributions to neighborhoods that really need that form of support. We also work a lot in policy reform. So we are into systemic changes to help support folks that need affordable supportive housing, and to make those changes to make that more accessible. We also provide consulting and technical assistance, and we do that both on the federal level, but also the state and local levels. So we can't really talk about supportive or affordable housing without giving it some context. And that context is the fact that systemic racism has impacted housing for as long as we can remember, right? There has been so much housing discrimination towards folks that may look differently than the majority of people. Maybe they're Black or brown in color. There is a system that has been practiced for years called redlining. It's a discriminatory practice where financial services are withheld from neighborhoods that have a significant number of people who are of a different racial or ethnic background. There's discriminatory lending practices. There's problems with fair housing endorsements, enforcements that apply for buyers and renters as well. And there's also a problem with generational wealth. As we know, it's very difficult to get out of a history of poverty. And when you're trying to attain some type of level of generational wealth, it's very difficult when educational systems are unfair, when Black and brown people are predominantly the ones involved in the justice system or the prison complex. It's also very difficult if, as a population, you have had trouble accessing services or getting a diagnosis. We know that housing impacts health, we know that it impacts employment, and we know that it impacts education. And without those three key components, your access to housing is significantly impaired. So CSH, again, we work to advance affordable housing. That's the goal, whether we're in Illinois or Nevada or Hawaii or Puerto Rico. We look to align services as an approach to help people thrive. We know that when people have the services that they need, they can be successful in their housing. So I want to talk a little bit about why housing, supportive housing is the solution to this whole history we have of systemic racism in the housing field. We know that supportive housing combines affordable housing with services that help people who face the most complex challenges to live with stability, autonomy, and dignity. And we know that because we know when we combine these services like employment and counseling and parenting support and health services and education, we know that that housing is going to be more stable for those folks. And we also know that we can't just impose services on people. We need to be sure that we are approaching supportive housing in a manner that's flexible and that is person-centered. So we don't want to overload people with support services that they don't need or want. This is an effort to support people in the space where they are with the needs that they have and the choices and the rights that they have. So a little bit about affordable housing 101. You're going to hear affordable and supportive housing kind of used synonymously. They're a little bit different, but for the purposes of our discussion, you might kind of hear me interchange that a little bit. So supportive housing, let's talk about what it isn't, okay? I mean, when I first got into this whole supportive housing field, it's like, okay, so like assisted living. Nope, nope. a treatment center for mental health. No, it is not a treatment model or method. It is not transitional. It is not a living situation that someone goes to temporarily in order to move on to something else. It is permanent. It is their home. Services come in to support them in their home, so they don't have to transition out. And it is not a licensed community care facility. It's a home just like you and I get to enjoy. So housing, supportive housing is housing units for people with low incomes and disabilities or multiple barriers to community living. And we're going to talk a little bit about what some of those barriers are a little bit later, and I think maybe the next slide. Excuse me. Plus the social health services that they want and need. And again, that's where we say they're there for you, but it's not a requirement for you to have those services if you want to live there. We don't force things on people. It is affordable, it's permanent, and it's independent. So again, that's where the living with stability, autonomy, and dignity comes in. And it is also not intended for every population that needs access to affordable housing. So it's not a cure-all for everything. Let's talk a little bit about the SRN rent determinations. So you can kind of get a better feel for what types of housing we're looking at when we talk about affordable housing, when we talk about income-based housing, and when we talk about subsidized housing. I know that those are three terms that can kind of get confusing. So when we talk about affordable housing, we're talking about rent that is set to be affordable to a household earning under 30% of the average median income. And so HUD every year issues an outline for every state and every county in those states on what the average median income is. And it'll vary. It'll vary from Montgomery County to Shelby County. It'll vary from Cook County to Macon County. That's why it's in a set document. Anybody can look it up. And the affordable housing rates are based on those numbers. Income-based housing is a little bit different. That's rent that's based on the annual household income. And it's targeted to income ranges, okay? So there may be a cap on how much you can earn in order to go into income-based housing. And then the final category is subsidized housing. And that is rent that's typically based on 30% of the household income. And that comes into play when we talk a little bit later about the statewide referral network, because one of the things as a service partner you would be doing is if there is a household that you're registering on the statewide referral network, you would be also indicating the income of each household member. That is what helps us determine which type of housing an individual may be eligible for, whether it be affordable, income-based, or subsidized.
A question.
Yeah.
Is income-based housing, does it have tiers?
It does, yeah. So supportive housing, what the heck does it look like, right? I mean, do you kind of get a picture in your head? Anybody have an idea when they think of supportive housing? What's that look like to you? I mean, do you kind of picture that in your own communities or your own neighborhoods? Because it's out there in your own communities and your own neighborhoods. And there's a number of different ways it can show up. So there are single site project-based buildings, which means it's only one building. They're not scattered, it's just one building. There's also clustered sites where you may have a building and maybe one whole floor is supportive housing of that whole building. There's also scattered sites where maybe a developer has several different buildings in different locations. And not all the people in supportive housing are located in one building. They may be spread across. And then there's integrated affordable, where you may have, for instance, you may have people with disabilities living with non-disabled tenants. So it's mixed, it's integrated. Is that kind of what you thought it was? Anybody have any differing opinions, or is that kind of what you pictured when you thought of supportive housing? You won't see signs out in front that say supportive housing. You won't see any kind of marker to distinguish it from being different than any other type of housing. It's meant to blend into the community and just be part of the community. So CSH and the SRN, what's the tie-in? How does that all fit together? Before I worked at CSH, I worked as a housing navigator. And my job was to find independent living arrangements in the community for individuals who had intellectual or developmental disabilities. Excuse me. And we work a lot with housing navigators. We work a lot with COCs. We work a lot with reentry. We work with all kinds of different agencies serving all different kinds of populations of people. And our Illinois team has had a relationship with the Department of Human Services for over 10 years in the sense of having a long-term contractual agreement to manage the statewide referral network. So that's the tie-in. CSH in the Chicago office, our Illinois team manages the statewide referral network. We administer the wait list. That means that we approve applications as they come in and we match people to properties. One of the projects of our Illinois team is to expand the pipeline throughout central and southern Illinois. And that's kind of my purpose for talking to you today. So we'll get to that in just a minute. So the statewide referral network, just to give you a description, it's a partnership of state agencies and social service providers connecting households with supportive housing. An affordable housing development, all affordable housing developments in Illinois will include a 10% set aside for the SRN, meaning if a developer is getting funding from HUD, usually 10% of the units in that building will be set aside as SRN units. And those are the units that CSH works with on the SRN. In metropolitan areas, that's 10%. In more rural areas, it's more like 5%. So there's a pretty big difference there. And if you're from rural Illinois, I'm sure you know the pinch of finding supportive, affordable housing. It is out there, but it's a little more tricky to find than it is in the larger areas like Cook County and the surrounding suburbs. Supportive housing, senior developments, and general affordable housing buildings are also included in the SRN. So it's not limited to a certain age group, a certain population of people, or whether or not you have a disability. So let's talk a minute about who the heck is eligible for an SRN. People who earn 30% of the area median income or below are connected to a service partner if they identify as people in institutions or at risk of institutionalization, if they're experiencing homelessness or they're at risk of homelessness, or if they're the head of a household with a disability. So if you have any of those eligibility criteria, you are eligible for the statewide referral network for an SRN unit. Oh, yeah.
Do you use the HUD definition of homeless for the experiencing or at-risk or Canadian family that's doubled up?
We use the at risk of homelessness. The other part of the SRN is 811. And it used to be called Section 8 or Section 811. Kind of been called by a few different names. And the qualifiers for the 811 are just slightly different. These again are folks who earn 30%, who earn under 30% of the area median income and people who are under 62. So there is an age qualifier for 811 that doesn't exist for the SRN. You have to be 62 or under to be eligible for 811. And you have to be receiving Medicaid long-term services and supports or state Medicaid plan services and in an institution or at risk of being institutionalized, including, I'm sorry, scratch the including. All 811 units are subsidized units. Not all SRN units are subsidized units. Okay, that's the distinction between the two. So as I've mentioned a few times, I'm hoping this is sticking, and the visuals I'm hoping will really glue it, right? CXH is building the pipeline through central and southern Illinois for affordable housing. And we need partners like you. We know there are folks throughout central and southern Illinois who are in need of supportive housing. And we know those folks aren't always getting connected because maybe people don't exactly know where to look. Maybe they don't know how to access those units. Or maybe you've attempted to access units and you've hit some stumbling blocks. I know I've had a couple of conversations already today saying, you know what, I've had folks that wanted to apply, but it seems like before we even get our foot in the door, the property manager already has somebody lined up. Well, the beauty of the SRN is that when a property receives HUD funding for their development, they agree that that certain percentage, either 10% or 5%, is going to be exclusively designated as SRN units. And the only way for them to initially fill those SRN units is through the statewide referral network. They need to come through us to get connected. If a property tries to fill that SRN unit outside of the SRN, for instance, with somebody from their internal wait list, they will be out of compliance with the Illinois Housing Development Authority. And that's not a good thing. They don't like that. HUD doesn't like that, or the Housing Authority doesn't like that. So they like working with the statewide referral network because we provide them the resources, we provide them the referrals of people to help them fill those vacancies. So again, when we're talking about supportive housing, we're talking about housing plus social or health services and you, because you're the service partners that help make those links. So who should become a service partner and why? Organizations who have already have relationships with community members, and you all here have those relationships. That's why you're here. And provide support services. Those folks are the ones that make good service partners. Because you're already providing services, you're probably already working with people in need of affordable housing or supportive housing, and it's a perfect marriage between the two. That opens the door to affordable and sometimes subsidized housing for people that may not otherwise have access. Staff who attend an onboarding or a training session will receive login credentials in order to be able to use the SRN. I think on your tables, you all should have kind of a handout that summarizes some of this, so you don't need to worry about like logging in all the details in your head. But it's such a simple process. We have a self-paced online program that you can do like in under an hour to become a service partner. And once you've completed that online training, which you do from the comfort of your own home or your own office, you would send in a user agreement to Emphasis. And Emphasis is who created our database for the statewide referral network. Emphasis then turns around and issues you a user name and a login ID. And as long as you log into the statewide referral network, you don't even need to enroll anybody right away. As long as you log in within the first 30 days of receiving your credentials, you are a registered service partner. And you're good to go. If you choose to enroll people, all the better. But you can get registered by just logging in for the very first time. As new buildings are completed, or turnover units, and turnover units are units that have already been occupied. It's not new construction. Someone lived there before, their lease expired, they left, now there's a vacancy, that's a turnover unit. As those become vacant, service providers are then contacted by us, the waitlist administrators, via a notice of availability. It's a letter that we send to you saying, hey, guess what? Your applicant, so-and-so, has been matched to this property, and here's the details.
And these properties, say, for instance, I believe I was part of this, which when COVID hit Chicago, I worked with you guys for back payment or something. And the thing with the wait list was no matter where, we lived in Montgomery County, we were homeless, but where the wait list puts you, that's where you land. So if I'm already building myself in Montgomery County, I uproot it all to go to Cook County, I go to wherever. So what is it that really
The statewide referral network allows you to choose
on the
your,
list, right, first? So it may not even be people from our county, correct, that we're helping that day.
possibly,
Possibly.
when you're putting an applicant on the statewide referral network, part of what you're choosing is their preferred geographical preference, okay? Based on their profile, based on the application that you fill out and submit, that is what goes into the database system so that they can be matched to a property. Yes, oftentimes people do come from far away to move into other counties because housing may not be available where they are. Or they may have family that lives there and they want to come back to that location. Or they have a provider that's moved and they want to follow the provider. There are a whole host of reasons why people choose to move around and not stay in one specific county. So yes, when a person is on the SRN, they can choose which county they want to live in. That does not necessarily mean that you are the ones serving that individual. They're already linked to a service partner. They're already linked to whoever put them on the SRN. Okay, that doesn't mean they're not going to come to you later for services. But the intent is when you're enrolling someone on the SRN, you're making a commitment to continue to provide those support services. If they move out of your area, then the commitment would be assumed that you would transfer that or make a referral to whoever is then in their new area so that they can receive those supports there.
Is the restrictions of, well, I didn't quite, I'm kind of hearing things, it's restrictions. Like, I don't, balance.
So if you are a lifetime registered sex offender, you are never going to be eligible for Section 811. Felonies, it depends on the tenant selection plan of each property. So every property works out a tenant selection plan. And I don't know, maybe you know this more, Fred, if they file that with IDA or, so IDA, that's
It's an institutionalization or passes up there. And, I wasn't quite understanding.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, folks with developmental disabilities live in institutions. People with mental health disorders live in institutions. They may be there inappropriately. They may have been placed there and they don't need that level of support. And so they have the right to be able to move into the community.
But I'm talking about like felons that have the right to move to communities.
Absolutely. We have a whole reentry program to help.
But see, what if they're already past that reentry? That's where rubber meets road.
So
They've
if
already
they,
lived like for 9 years
right,
and they still don't qualify because they're not in reentry. They're not walking out the gates. They're not walking out of a, house. Halfway house.
right,
And they've been building your life up and they still can't get that help to keep them and further them in the progression of forward in their lives to get out of poverty. I'm in that position right now. That's why I asked.
right.
Depending on the felony, if it's old enough to get your.
Not always.
Well, it depends on the crime.
That's right. That's why I'm saying, because there's people out there that go, I'm violent criminal and never put anything in. Okay, just for example, but I cannot get an ounce of like that kind of house. How is that fair? 9 years later, out of a domestic violence situation. So if we keep letting this kind of thing come into our communities, where it's all the same, how are we changing anything? How are you really helping? You're doing the same thing over and over and over.
There is housing for folks with a felony background. There is housing. It does exist.
Where at?
There's a place called Phoenix Project, actually.
Where at?
It's in central or southern. No, it's a little further south.
Marion, that area, Granite City. Is that where it's open, like further that way?
Oh, that's one here, right?
Oh, I think it is Heron.
How
Yeah.
about where I'm already lived my life, my husband and I are creating, we got jobs, we got secure, you know what I'm saying?
I hear you. I hear you.
That's the true question, because this is what it is, all these little, these are all rural areas, right? Everybody's here from a small county, I'm assuming.
I know you wanted to say something.
I'm not. Can't look at the background. As far as what your regulations go, section 8, I believe is also covered under that. There's like a full process we have to go through. If we do background checks in the all housing authorities, do the background checks. Somebody has to do that initial check, filter out anything that doesn't fit the criteria, and then it comes by desk. I have never seen anything that's been 6 months old.
And you don't see it, but who's the person before you that built? I think that's where I don't understand, because I've been told I can't get help for years
This
because
is,
of that help.
this is relatively new.
Public,
I'm in Montgomery. We've been in Montgomery since.
We can find the, housing where there's any sense in there, if there's any laws change up.
I was just curious. It just seems always there was something about it, like, I can't put someone, we care of it. Can't live, because
And that's what your service partners can help with, because we also help in providing technical assistance to service partners. And like you said, we're aware of what the new laws are that are coming out from HUD and IDA. And we help provide technical assistance in terms of being able to apply for a reasonable accommodation, being able to provide letters of support. We help provide that technical assistance to our service partners so that we can increase options for access to affordable supportive housing.
I'm with Lee Lady, and you refer to the SRN. Most of the people who refer come to us because they have an eviction going on. So I'm just curious about the process. Do you go to the landlord and say, we have an applicant for you, and can they still deny because there's an eviction on their record, or how does that?
Each property has their own tenant selection plan, so it would be dependent on the tenant selection plan. We don't actually intervene. We provide technical assistance to you as the service partner for how to proceed if you have an eviction. You can have some evictions, there are some interventions available to you if there is an eviction on record. So yes, we provide the technical support to help you kind of navigate through those kinds of waters.
Okay, so, and I don't do this part, so that's why I'm asking. I know that maybe people that do probably know this answer, but so you say, hey, there's a place available, and then we apply, the tenant would need to then apply, and then it goes through the normal process.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. I know you had a question.
Is there a process in place for people who are not primarily English speakers?
If you needed an interpreter, is that what you're kind of asking? I think that anybody that is administering the wait list could probably link you to some type of resource to assist with that. Yeah. Fred, did you have something to add?
Oh, this is previously on the idea of the tenant selection plan, but that is, most of these developments have some funding through the Illinois Housing Development Authority, affectionately called her IDA. And IDA requires you to submit a tenant selection plan. If your tenant selection plan is restricted, IDA is likely not to give you money. So the tenant selection plans, in most cases, should not be a barrier. They should open the door rather than close the door. Because IDA is not happy with tenant selection plans and say, we're not gonna take this person, we're not gonna take this person, we're not gonna take that person. It's kind of a general statement, but, you know, if somebody comes in with a tenant selection plan that just excludes anybody that might ever cause a problem, IDA's not gonna give them money, because that's not what the program's about.
Right, and that would be an instance where we would intervene, not necessarily with the property manager, we would be going to IDA. We have weekly meetings with IDA, so we're very current on, you know, what they're working on. We're currently working on the whole issue of tenant selection plans with IDA, so we're very involved in that part of it. I know you had a question.
Yes, we work for sale, soil land access to independent living for people with disabilities. However, we have several housing lists, and we have a landlord subsidized housing, and we have a landlords who work with balance list. So, you know, but that's Coles, Cumberland Park, Shelby, Moultrie, and maybe Macon.
Mhm. Yeah, there's a wealth of information out there. If you ever need linkage, most of the waitlist administrators, like myself, I work with Central Illinois and Southern Illinois. We have another waitlist administrator that works exclusively with Cook County, and another waitlist administrator that works with the surrounding western and northern suburbs. So we do know the providers in the area. We work with them very closely. We work with the service partners closely. If we don't know, we know where to go to get an answer for you. If we can't get an answer for you, we know what to do about that too. Can't always fix everything, but you know, that is what CSH is there for, is to address some of these barriers that people are facing to affordable, accessible housing.
Link of the debate, someone that gets
That's a great question because it can vary wildly depending on where you live. And I'm gonna get to that in a little bit, but it could average from, like, I literally can approve I'm the one that approves all the applications coming in. So I can literally approve an application and they could instantly be matched to a property. I could be working on a property and get an email from a service partner saying, hey, I want to enroll my applicant who wants to live in Shelby County. Can you please refer them to XYZ property? And I can do that. If there's an opening and there's not a bunch of referrals pending, that person could, you know, theoretically walk right in. Yeah, I mean, there's a process, obviously, application process, background checks, credit checks, so on. But it can happen very quickly, but I'm not gonna lie. If you're in more populated areas, it can also happen very slowly. It can be 6 months or more. Yeah, it's not really common for it to be 2 years. Did you say 2 years?
So I said I heard 2 barriers, and that was credit and backgrounds.
Yeah. Yeah, again, that goes to the tenant selection plan, because not everybody does a background check and not everybody does a credit check. We also work really closely, with DHS, and we work with an attorney in Chicago who works very hard on fair housing. And if we know that you're experiencing a barrier, we have a resource to go to for that as well. Okay. How am I doing on time? Are we like way over?
Whenever you're done.
Oh, okay. So how does the process work? Okay, here's how the process works. It's not hard. You, as a service partner, would be entering an applicant into the SRN via a process called pre-screening. That's where you just enter some initial information to see if they even qualify for the SRN or the 811. So you don't have to add a lot initially to just pre-screen someone to see if they're gonna qualify. And this is somebody that you would already be working with, okay, and who you think might fit the criteria. Once you've done that and you get so far in the application, it looks like you've got the green light to keep going, you would then complete the intake process, which is just very simply put, completing the application. That's where you're actually going to go in and really fill out all of the questions on the form, including geographical preferences and so forth. Then you have the waiting period where you're waiting for your applicant to be matched. And as I said, the waitlist administrator who is covering that service area is actually the one that does the matching. You don't need to do anything. You just sit back and you wait for that match to occur. Once that match happens, you're going to be notified by that notice of availability that I talked to you about. It's a letter you're going to get by email. And voila, your individual is linked. You may need to provide supports depending on the individuals that you're serving. Some folks need someone to go with them to fill out an application. Maybe it's complicated, maybe they don't speak English. Maybe they need some, maybe they need someone there with them. It's not required for you to do that, but you do have a user agreement as a service partner that you are going to support that individual. You're not just gonna sign them up on the SRN and walk away. We have had to institute a new policy with service partners. If you fail to respond to a notice of availability 10 times or more, and it doesn't have to be for the same person, it's just 10 times in general. We then ask to sit down with your supervisor and yourself and talk to you. Maybe your workload has increased and you just don't have the time to do it anymore. Maybe you're confused about what the process is and you need a refresher. There's a whole number of reasons why you may not be able to follow through in responding to those notices, but it's really critical that you do. And here is why. A person can only be matched to one property at a time. And until you respond to that notice of availability, that person is locked into that property and can't be referred to other housing opportunities. So your response to that notice of availability kind of determines their trajectory going forward, okay? So it's really imperative that you kind of stick to that 10-day notification window. Okay. We've talked a lot about this application, right? I kind of just wanted to give you an example of what it looks like. It's not this scary beast. It's not overwhelming. These are some of the questions that you're asked. And this is like just a hypothetical service partner, Todd Fuller, who actually works for DHS, but you're asked to fill in the blanks. Does your individual have any, for instance, specific accessibility needs? Do they need an accessible apartment? Do they need a no-step entry? Do they have a service dog? Do they need a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom? How many household members are there? Those are the kinds of questions you're going to find that you're completing on the SRN. It's just really couldn't be any easier. It's really easy. So, once you've completed, I think I might have skipped some slides, but once you've completed that application, like I said, you'll be notified with a notice of availability. If you indicate, yeah, my applicant is interested, then we issue a referral letter, which both you and the property manager will get a copy of. And your contact information, your email, your name, and your phone number will be on that referral letter. So when the property manager gets to the point of saying, yes, I want this applicant to come in and fill out an application, you're the one that they're gonna be calling. Okay? And then you in turn would notify your applicant. And the rest is up to the property. Anybody have any questions? Yes,
First of all, I just want to say thank you. Sounds like a dream. I'm gonna get signed up, so I'm excited for that.
I love that.
Say, I work with a lot of families and we blanket every housing entity. So it's the, you have situations where they get pulled on the SRN and, and they say, oh, we need to do an app, and that person is already on their regular app list, and then they can pull them off their app list, to put them into the SRN spot. So does that make sense? Like if we're already on a wait list that's 9 or 12 months, but then their name is for SRN, and then they go over.
they go over.
Okay.
Yep, they have priority over the internal wait list. Hey, Fred, I think I skipped some slides. I do have some slides I want to share with you because I currently have properties. Get this, I can't fill. I'm relying on you guys because I have units and I know there are people that need housing and I have no referrals. So I'm here today to plead with you to please join us as a service partner. Help us link the people that you're working with. Help us help them find affordable, accessible housing. Because without you, the statewide referral network doesn't work. It's a partnership. We need you. Where should we- Okay,
Yeah, so talk about the properties if you will.
all right.
And one question that I have, nobody else has is, this group here covers 18 counties in south central Illinois, does not include like Decatur, Champaign, Springfield, it's basically south of there. Mostly rural, Coles County is the only, sort of urban county with, Shelbyville, Litchfield, Harlanville, go on, Paris. Do we have properties in those areas that are looking for tenants?
We do, and I am not tech savvy, so I apologize. My slide with all my openings is somehow not on my presentation. We work with URBA. Jess Pauley is one of our service partners. Sorry to call you out, Jess, but that's kind of, that's what it is. We work with URBA. We have a property right now in Paris, Illinois, Maple Ridge. It's beautiful. I have seen this property. It's run by Laborers Home Development Firm. We just did a supportive housing tour in Paris, Illinois last week to recruit more service partners, to recruit more service providers who provide those support services, and to see if anybody is even getting a twinkle in their eye about developing supportive housing. We have an opening at Maple Ridge. We can't fill. We don't have enough referrals. I had an opening in Charleston, which is Coles County, Highland Place. Took forever to try to find enough referrals to send out. I should mention to you, properties have, when they list a unit on the SRN, we have 30 days to fill that vacancy before they're eligible to go to their internal wait list. So that kind of goes back to your question. If you've got someone on an internal wait list, they're gonna be sitting there, but if they're able to go on the SRN, and oftentimes I'll reach out to service partners saying, I've got somebody on an internal wait list, can you enroll them on the SRN? They're gonna go to the front of the line. The other thing you need to know about the statewide referral network is there are class members. So there's Williams, Colbert, and Liggis. And through a consent decree with the state, these folks receive prioritization on the statewide referral network list, meaning they are priority one. They get first consideration because there's a consent decree requiring the state of Illinois to move these folks out of facilities or institutions. Okay, Williams, I think, is coming from institutes of, they call it mental disease, but it's for folks with mental health disorders. We have Colbert, which are folks who have been placed in nursing homes and don't need that level of support. That's too restrictive for them. And then we have Liggis, and those are the folks that have intellectual or developmental disabilities. Those three categories receive first priority status. So we work from a prioritized list. When a property lists on the SRN as waitlist administrators, we see that listing of names and they have numbers next to their names. If there's a 1, we know as waitlist administrators, those are the first folks that are gonna get notices, okay? That does not mean that if you don't have a class member that you're serving, that your folks won't be notified. They will be, but we've got to work down in order of that list because that's what the state requires us to do, because that's who our contract's with. What else? Did I miss a question?
You could mention SH. I guess the S and the H is supportive housing.
Corporation for Supportive Housing. Yep, that's who I work for.
So when you say, obviously, it's the ask, different 30% less. So they can be without.
They can be. There are properties where you don't even need to have an income. They have a sliding scale. They'll base your rent on what your income is. Not every property, they're all divided. They're income-based, affordable, that's what we talked about, income-based, affordable, subsidized. Okay, subsidized means you may have a housing choice voucher from the Public Housing Authority, okay? So you receive a subsidy to pay for that rent, okay? An example of that would be Section 8 housing. There are project-based vouchers. A property may have a project-based voucher to help offset the cost of that rent for that unit. I have properties in Montgomery County Senior Homes. Anybody heard of that? Can't fill it. I don't have any service partners in Montgomery County that are referring people. They list, I look everywhere. I don't get any referrals. They get a waiver and we do it all again. And there are folks out there. I know there are folks out there.
On that senior living that you have in Montgomery County, what's the restrictions?
That I don't know off the top of my head.
62 disabled, no felony. Have credit, will cost $15 per bag. How much money?
If we have individuals that we believe would benefit from this state referral network, and while our agencies are deciding if this is something that they want to partner with, how do we refer that individual to a state referral network provider? So if I have somebody that I think would benefit from being on this list, but we're not a provider to enroll them, who can I hook them up with that can get them on that list?
You can be the provider. You can be the service partner to put them on the list. Not everybody needs support services, right? But we need partners to put people on the list, to respond to the notices, to notify the applicants that there's an available unit out there, and to let us know whether we need to send a referral. That's you can do that.
But my agency hasn't made that decision and I'm on the front line and I don't make that decision.
Uh-huh.
So I have people right now that I'm thinking of that would benefit from this. Where can I send them right now?
You can't send them to the statewide referral network without a service partner to enroll them.
What agency?
Jake, so if you have someone specific, Jess is a provider right now.
Yeah, go through Jess.
Thank you.
Not forever, not forever.
Yeah, you can be a service provider really anywhere. Ideally, though, we want you to be familiar with the individual you're enrolling, right? Because you're filling out some pretty confidential information. You're filling out income. You're providing social security numbers. You're providing some pretty specific identifying information. So, you know, we want people feeling comfortable coming to you to have you fill that application out because they're providing sensitive information to someone.
Off the top of your head, do you remember any other places that you're trying to fill?
I had a whole list of them. They filled up 2 pages. My name and number is on one of these slides. Call me, text me, email me. I will be happy to give you a list. You've got. Okay, I've got Marion County. I've got St. Clair, Madison, Morgan, Bond, Williamson. I don't know if you guys don't go down that far, do you? No, that's probably southern. You do? I've got Williamson, Madison, St. Clair. I've got Clinton County, Schuler, Franklin. I have a bunch of properties that I have 0 referrals for. And I also want to tell you, your applicant will not be the only referral in some cases. We have a referral and then we have something called a backup referral. The backup referral, hopefully, when a property manager gets a referral, they go in the order that they receive the referrals. But that's up to their tenant selection plan. We can't decide that for them. If they do go in order, then the backup would be the second or third or fourth or whatever, for the property manager to contact.
I said, this will be the last question. You're staying, right?
I can stay if you have questions.
So,
Yeah, hit me up.
So tell me again about eviction, that's okay to have that in the back.
It is okay to have evictions. Not every property is going to allow you to complete an application if you do have an eviction record, but it varies. And there are reasonable accommodations that may be applicable that we can help with.
And the other question is, are we going to give slide deck,
Would you like this like that? You know what? I'm a newbie, so I have to kind of check and see what the, you know, I'll ask. It'll be an ask. How about that? You sign up as a service partner, I'll send you a slide deck. How about that? Thank you so much, everybody. You've had some great questions. Thank you so much for letting me be here today. I've enjoyed talking to you a lot. Thank you very much. Thank you. My, jump drives. Oh, okay.
You're not doing that.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Kara. That was very interesting and hopefully we can recruit some more providers. Our next speaker is Brenda Engel with Sullivan Access to Independent Living, also known as SAIL. And I'm not sure if you've got someone else. I don't have your name down. No, so. So come on up, ladies. Do you need the? No. Okay, perfect. Oh, and I forgot, I have to say to you, while we are waiting for them, we went ahead and drew our first door prize winner, and that is Teresa Metzger. So go ahead, we have fuel pens over there, go ahead and pick one off that table, and then there's a little pumpkin. I'm not leaving it, stick it to the side. Thank you, ladies.
Hi, I'm Rita Engel, and this is Carly Parks. She is our. Hi, oh, yeah.
There you go.
Well, that's different. This is Carly Parks. She is our independent living transition person. She moves people from nursing homes into their own apartments, which is a big program for us. But I'm going to let her talk about our 5 core services first.
We have 5 core services. We're not used to mine, so, we do advocacy and we, really encourage self-advocacy into, our people that we provide to, which is, we serve people with disabilities, in Macon, Moultrie, Shelby, Coles, Clark, and Cumberland counties. We're the Center for Independent Living. We're out of the Charleston CCC office, but we also have an office in Shelbyville and also in Decatur. We do independent living skills development, which is where we get with the individual that would like certain services, and we kind of find out what's the best resource for them, and then we'll help them towards their goals and along the way. We also do information and referral, which is kind of what the lady before was talking about, that they also do, like, if you come to us, if we don't have an answer for your needs, we will figure it out for you. We do talk a lot with our coworkers and the other office if we don't know the answer ourselves. Brenda does peer counseling, which just kind of, if somebody feels the need, need to talk, they can call us and talk, and Brenda will also talk about her disability. 51% of our staff have a disability also. And then to the transition, which is what we do. That's my job. So basically, I get a referral from a nursing home or any type of institutional facility. And then I'll go and meet that person, and we go through a lot of resources. It ain't a long process, but it does, take some time. We find out the area they prefer to live in. We'll go together and go through applications and make sure it's kind of a good environment for the individual themselves and what kind of preference wise. But with that program, we'll furnish it and we'll pay for the first month's rent and deposit so that they can have their check and not have to worry about that stuff the first go round. We also do youth transition, which is for ages 14 to 24. And what that means is we kind of help them along the way and make sure that they can have the resources available or know about them so that they can still independently live once they get out of mom and dad's house or grandma's house, wherever they may live. Do we have any questions about those?
I also do the 504 IEPs advocacy for families in our counties. And we get referrals from everybody, because we do help people with disabilities. We have brought in some assistive technology in our office. We have an assistive technology lab where people can come in and borrow something, take it home and try it out to see if it works for them. And then if it does, we can help them try to find it for cheaper. We have the magazines and they're so expensive to order anything. So if we have more than one on hand, we can give one of them out to them, which is really helpful. Gosh,
So that's like the magnifiers. We got pocket talkers for the hearing impaired, which is just kind of a little device they can put in their shirt or pocket. And it has a little amplifier. And of course, some of them don't like the headphones or earbuds, but
it's hard for older
Yeah,
folks to get
that
the earbuds in, you know? So sometimes the headphones work better.
and we have talking watches. One of our big popular one is the e-yo-yo, which is a portable magnifier and it has a stand. We have it over there if anyone wants to check it out. We have a few odd end things from our office. And each office we have also has an AT lab, so.
But what we do is when somebody wants housing, like we're going down to Urban tomorrow at Greenup, and we're going to assess the housing building to make sure it stands up to Americans with Disabilities Act. We do that. There's a yardstick over there that has like the height for people with disabilities for their toilet paper roller. There's certain things that really get covered well in that. Yeah, light switches, all kinds of things, anything so that when you move somebody, if they have a disability, that they can just freely move in and just start living their lives, you know. And there's a whole list of opportunities to enhance ability. But one of the things that I do, I also do the personal assistant training to keep people living in their home so they don't have to go to a nursing home or they don't have to go live with someone else. So on the backside, we've got key elements of independent living philosophy. People with disabilities do not need help, they only need assistance that allows them to help themselves. We are big about self-advocacy, like Carly had said. People with disabilities are for independence, not dependence. People with disabilities have the right to make choices that affect their own lives and must be empowered to take control over their own lives. They have the dignity of risk. Like, you know, a 14-year-old can go out in the old skate park on a skateboard, and I know parents are freaked out, but that's their dignity of risk. Someone with a disability should have the same opportunity to make choices that may be a little risky, but it's the dignity of risk that we're giving them, allowing them to be. People with disabilities are creative, possess survival skills like all people. People with disabilities believe people do not need degrees to understand people with disabilities. They need personal experience. And that's how we got Carly. I trained her to be a personal assistant. She was working that, and when my supervisor left, I moved up and we interviewed, and Carly is who I knew we wanted, and my executive director, because she's got this big heart and will work twice as hard as anybody to find some answer, even if we don't know it. And people will call us for the information referral, will say, I'm sorry, we don't know, but give me a couple of days and we will research this and find out an answer for you. So we do try, even if we don't know the answer right then. And of course, the big thing now is people first language, and my executive director, Jerry, uses a wheelchair. And that's how you should say it. She hates the word wheelchair bound or handicapped. It's disabilities. She said it reminds you of a man begging on the corner with a hat in his hand, and she can't stand that. She's a big proponent of people doing everything they possibly can, but we're there to help them. So if you are around someone who happens to be visually impaired and you say, see you later, don't worry about it. That's a common adage that everybody uses. Or someone who uses a wheelchair, gotta run. You know, sometimes people say that and then they get freaked out by it because they said something. People don't, they just want to be treated like everybody else. So I think that's about all we've got. We would like to, if you want to come look at what we've got, yeah.
How do people apply? Or do they have to be referred by a doctor or somebody
They
that
call-
says they have this?
They call us.
I'd say anyone, just call any
Or
of the
come by the
offices.
office. We've got my card and Carly's card are over with the assistive technology. You know, Betty Watkins is in the Shelbyville office and she covers Shelbyville and Sullivan. We cover Coles, Cumberland and Clark, and Emily Dobson covers the Macon County. So there's somebody, and we will help the surrounding counties, even if they're not our counties, if they ask for assistance.
So if somebody would call you and they're in a different county that you don't serve, would you help them find?
Yes, or we would give them, we would find a reference for them to call. Like I know Pace is out of Champaign and they cover like we cover Clark County and they cover Edgar County. So Paris is like both counties. So we can both do that, but if they need the PACE, we will refer them to PACE or OFA because we have this new program, which we aren't doing yet because we are not skilled enough. The home modifications, you know, Coles County Regional Planning does that, USDA Rural Development does that. So now we're doing it, but OFA is the one who's doing it for Coles and Cumberland and Clark and
Thank you.
Yes, OFA is opportunities for access.
yes. Amy, yeah,
So the technology, is that something that they can be referred to by the doctor and not like Medicaid or Medicare type of process?
if we would try to talk to them about getting it covered. Because, you know, it's an assistive technology device that can help enhance their life. You know, I have a grandson with Down syndrome and autism, and they got him an iPad that had pictures of everybody, so, you know, in his early years, he's better now. I mean, he's older now, but you know, that really helped immensely in school. So anything we can help with, we will try to find an answer for you.
And most of the things that, people are looking for, we do have in our office. If we don't, we try to have a little bit at each office, but if we happen to have it loaned out to somebody and somebody's interested in seeing it, we will like get with the other office and get that so that that person can at least try it and then I guess you could call it, check it out, but use it for a while and see how they like it and if it fits for them.
Yeah, we have a Hoyer lift, but it's not the electric one, it's the old fashioned kind. But a gentleman broke his and we were able, Carly took it down to him and his aide was able to get that set up until Medicare paid for one for him to have. So, you know, we will try whatever we can or whoever we can. Anything else? All right, please go over and check out our stuff. And we have, you know, like wheelchairs in the toilets. And what we don't have, the Charleston VFW has a huge building that's full of stuff. And I know there's been a couple of times I didn't have something because it was loaned out to someone else. And they've allowed me to take something for them. So we'll find wherever they need, we'll find something. Okay?
Thank you, ladies. Go ahead and choose on this.
Oh, I'm gonna call myself. Here, I hope it's not.
All right, our next is Sue Shumway. So if you want to head on up to the door prize table and do something.
We're gonna go ahead and take about a 5-minute break, before we start with our last presenter. We did have, our presenter, Aaron, was not able to make it today. So we just have one more presentation with Fred, who's gonna do some training for us. But go ahead and take a 5-minute break and then we'll get him up there and get him started.
I go up and I go on first Tuesday. Yeah. Okay, so can I?
Right here for you.
I work with leaders.
I'll raise it up. There you go.
Oh, okay.
I think that can do
Yeah. If I want to go to check. But I had your life. Every year I'm like something up.
I don't know, I mean, tell the.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I was like, I felt like.
You know what? Yeah, so you don't
Okay, your 5 minutes are about up, so come back to your tables, we'll get started.
That's okay, my business. I'm going to do. Thank you so much. Can I help her? Because I'm going to.
Okay, I want to get started again. I have two things that I need to do here before we eat lunch. So you've had a break, so. The first thing I'm going to do is, I'm going to be speaking on behalf of the Coordinated Entry Committee for the Continuum of Care. And the Coordinated Entry Committee, of course, is responsible kind of oversight of our entire coordinated entry process, which, as you know, is how people get involved in our homeless network throughout the 18 counties, depends on people in our local field offices. There's 19 field offices, one in every county, 2 in Coles County, because it's the most populous county, and that's how people get connected with services and housing operated by all of your programs. Okay, with that as background, we just completed an evaluation of the coordinated entry system. We did one 2 years ago, we did one again just recently, and I want to share a lot of good news with you. First thing, coordinated entry is serving way more people than it was 2 years ago. 50% increase in caseload in a 2-year period. It's just people coming in with some kind of housing crisis into one of your offices. Despite the fact that you're seeing more people, you're also having more success. 80% of the people that came in for coordinated entry services, you were able to assist without having to enroll them in a project by getting them to keep their current housing, or they self-resolve, calling a landlord, calling a cousin, working out some way where we could prevent them from becoming homeless. 80%, 4 out of every 5. 2 years ago was 70%. So you're seeing more people, but you're also helping more of them solve their problems, you know, almost instantly. Of those that did get enrolled, 2 years ago, 56% of them wound up with permanent housing. This year, 77%, over 3/4 wound up with permanent housing. And finally, we asked a random sampling of clients how they felt about the services. 2 years ago, it was a little disturbing, and some of you might remember this. We had a lot of comments. Well, you know, we kind of got lost in the system. We didn't feel like they really knew, they didn't really listen to us, blah, blah, blah. And as you know, we've done some training and some reinforcement. This year, those comments disappeared. In a 2-year period, those comments disappeared. And well over half of the people in the survey said, yes, coordinated entry did a good job and they helped us. So first of all, we want to recognize everybody who works in one of these, in any way coordinated entry. If you work in one of the county offices, if you work in coordinated entry at URBA or CEFS or Illinois Valley, would you stand up, please? Everybody's in a county office. Come on, I know there's a bunch of you here. And we're gonna give you a little recognition. This afternoon, we're going to be presenting the entire evaluation report to the board. And where's Jess? Well, we'll ask Jess later. I'd like to ask Jess if, once the board approves that, if we could post that on the website so that you could all download that and read that. I think you'd find it really, really interesting. Again, thank you so much for what you've done. Okay, and my next, we'll wait a second. Thank you. Okay, my next job is as a consultant Many of our programs are funded by HUD, our supportive housing project, our rapid rehousing projects, the Haven Shelter, the Hope Program in East Central Illinois, and there's somebody here from a housing authority, public housing authority. You're also funded by HUD. We're required to do an annual training in family composition, gender identity, equal access, and emergency transfer. I've been a consultant to the South Central Continuum for at least 6 years. And so for most of those years, I've done this slideshow. You've all seen the slideshow. If you've been here, it's gonna be, and I thought, well, how am I gonna make it different this year? How am I gonna get their attention? I thought, well, maybe I just have to change the background of the slide. You know, that should be pretty interesting. And that was kind of a dumb idea. So instead, I decided, you know, especially those of you that heard this, but you should know it better than I do. So we're gonna have a quiz. And if you have something to write on, just, no one's gonna share your answers. You don't have a piece of paper, write it on your wrist or write it on your neighbor's forehead. Doesn't matter. So we're gonna do a little quiz. Those of you who have seen this like 3 or 4 times, really you should ace it. There's 10 questions. No problem at all. Okay, question number 1. Which of these is not a family according to HUD? A man, a woman, 2 children, 2 men with no children, a grandmother, her transgender son and his baby, or none of the above. They are all families. You've had long enough on this one. That's what, D. Who had D? Yep. They're all families. It does not matter for any projects that are funded by HUD, and I'd say any project anywhere. Doesn't matter if people are married, doesn't matter how long they've been together, how many adults, how many kids, sexual orientation, gender identity, number or age of children. If they say they're a family, they're a family. Okay, an emergency shelter, such as the Haven or Hope, is allowed to serve only one gender, either male or female, only if it's operated by a religious entity, it posts a big sign on its front entrance saying it's single sex, it has shared sleeping or bathing spaces, or it's located in a rural county. Only one of those is true. Ready? Okay, only if it has shared sleeping or bathing spaces are they allowed to serve only one gender. So that these, a little breakout on that, the single gender shelter has to be for individuals only. In other words, it doesn't claim to serve families. And the shelter must not be considered a dwelling unit. In other words, it's not just like one apartment or one house. So it must have a single structure and the bedrooms or bathing facilities are shared. Other than that, it has to serve all genders. Question 3, when is it permissible or okay to ask for proof of gender, such as a birth certificate or an ID card? Never. Only during the initial interview, because we need to have that to put into our HMIS system. Only at the point where you're referring somebody to housing, or only when you're assigning them to a particular bed in the shelter. Everyone good to go on this one? Never. No, it gets a little tougher. Question 4. Is it okay to limit a housing project to any of these groups? You know, you can answer each one of these separately. There might be all yes, all no, might be some yeses, some nos. Is it okay to limit a housing project to veterans? To people who are LGBTQ plus? To survivors of domestic violence? Or to chronically homeless? So you have to have a yes or no on each one of these. Are you ready? Okay. Veterans, yes, you can have a project specifically for veterans. You cannot have a project specifically for LGBTQ plus. You cannot, yes, you can have a project that's limited to survivors of domestic violence. And yes, you can have a project that's limited to people who are chronically homeless.
Why is the LGBTQ plus?
Because that would be considered gender discrimination. If you're limiting it only to people who are LGBTQ plus.
Like,
Yeah,
there's a
there has-
retirement facility that's just LGBT.
I'm sorry,
There's a retirement community.
there's a retirement community. I'd be interested to know how they negotiated this HUD rule.
Well, it was in a different state, but.
Well, it would still be under HUD rules, if it received any HUD funding. They would still be under HUD rules. I'm not saying everybody follows these rules, by the way. There has been a significant discussion. I don't know if anybody here knows more about this than I do, but for a while, we were being told that you could not limit housing to a particular disability. In other words, you couldn't say this is only for people with mental illness, or this is only for people with substance abuse disorder, or this is only for HIV/AIDS. Because HUD was saying that is disability discrimination. You're favoring one disability group over another. And I honestly don't know how that has been resolved. Does anybody know anything more about that? Okay. Here's a matching question. Question 5. On the left side, you see 3 terms: sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. On the right side, I hope you can read that from where you are. I'll read it aloud if you can. There are 3 definitions. And you have to draw arrows from the correct term to the definition that matches. I know you don't have it in front of you, but just in your mind, draw 3 arrows. The definitions are an internal or innate sense of being male, female, or another gender. That's the top one. The middle one is physical or emotional attraction to a gender. And the third is external appearances of a person's gender. So each of those definitions matches one of the terms on the left. Following this, you're just doing matching. I know you don't have these terms in front of you, but you can certainly draw 3 arrows. Okay. First arrow should go from the top one on the left to the middle one on the right. Sexual orientation is physical or emotional attraction to a gender. That's distinct from gender expression or gender identity. By the way, and I think you all know this, we've had a lot of training on this in the past. It really can hurt people if someone else calls their sexual orientation a preference or a lifestyle. Makes it sound like a choice that we all can make. I can choose to be gay. I'm hetero and I can't choose to be gay. It's not in me. And if someone is gay, they can't choose to be hetero. It's not like a smorgasbord. Gender identity, that arrow should go up to the top. The innate or internal sense of being a particular gender. that may or may not match the sex assigned at birth. And then that leaves gender expression, so that arrow should go straight across the bottom, which is the external appearance of a person's gender, such as behavior, clothing, hairstyle, body language, and voice. Okay, moving on, we're doing fine on time, right? Number 6. Is it ever okay to ask a person's gender identity? In other words, to ask what gender they identify as being? A, no, that's always wrong. B, you can ask, but the person can refuse to answer. C, you can ask and the person is required to give an answer in order to receive assistance. Yeah, this one? Yes, correct answer is actually B. You could ask, in fact, for HMIS and for other record keeping systems, we do keep track of gender. But if the person says, I don't want to give you that information, and hopefully you're telling them that they don't have to give. Same thing with gender, race, disability, other protective factors. They don't, if they don't want to answer, if they decline to answer, and I should say decline rather than refuse, it sounds a little nicer. If they decline to answer, we don't count that against your project when we're doing data quality checks. Because that's their right. And we don't include their data, when we're looking to see about gender equity. So correct answer is actually B. Okay. Question 7, which are examples of discrimination based on LGBTQ status? And there's 4 things here. Again, it's a separate answer for each one. A is a permanent supportive housing case manager refuses to admit a queer participant because they would make other participants uncomfortable or feel unsafe. So they're concerned about how other people are going to react, other clients. B, a transitional housing project tells a gay person that they must follow different rules for toileting and bathing. C, a property manager ignores complaints from LGBTQ individuals about being harassed by other residents of the project. Or D, a local group invites a shelter to participate in a Pride Day event. So again, it's going to be yes or no for each one. Okay, the answer to A is yes. The answer to B is yes. The answer to C is yes. The answer to D is no. That clearly is not discrimination. They've been invited to participate. Now even if they say no, that's not discrimination. They're just choosing not to participate in that event. But if they say yes, that's probably even better. They're signaling that they are allies. But it's not discrimination to invite them. And it's not discrimination even if they decline to go. But the top 3 are discriminatory actions. Okay. That's supposed to say, what does HUD mean? Not what do HUD mean? What do HUD mean by emergency transfer? And if you've not had this before, I don't expect you to know this one because quite honestly, we did not know, we being Jess and I who write the HUD application every year, didn't know what an emergency transfer was a couple of years ago. We saw a question saying, what's your emergency transfer policy? And we had to look it up. And so, and then we had to create a policy. Is an emergency transfer giving an unhoused person a bus ticket out of town? That's A. Is it moving a survivor of domestic violence to safer housing, permanent supportive housing, or rapid rehousing? Is it helping a child in rapid rehousing move to a different school because of bullying? Or is it sending HMIS records to another continuum of care because the participant has moved to another city outside of our area? Which one do you think it is? A, B, C, or D? Answer is B. The emergency transfer in HUD lingo is moving someone to safer housing for clients who are survivors of domestic violence. If they feel that house is unsafe because maybe their perpetrator knows where they're living now, or it's on their perpetrators, the way that their perpetrator goes to work every day, he or she drives by that housing, dating violence, sexual assault, if the person was sexually assaulted on or near that property, therefore does not feel safe, or they're being stalked. And a unit is provided by the project. In other words, we asked them to move there and they accepted that unit. But then they came back and said, listen, I don't feel safe here because domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking. Then they can request that we move them to another unit. Is the COC then required to move that person? Yes or no? Here's a shocker, no. Because the COC might not be able to find a safer unit. But the COC must try, they must act quickly. If they find a unit, and before they offer that unit, they must make sure that the client is eligible for that particular unit. And that they meet whatever eligibility standards there are for that unit. And that the unit is the right size for their household. You know, if somebody, let's say it's a mom and 3 kids, you can't offer them a 1-bedroom unit. It has to be something that they qualify for. Importantly, safety is defined by the clients, not up to us, whether or not it's safe, it's up to them. And what we do suggest is that working with whoever your domestic violence program is in your county, whether it's Cove or Dove or Sojourn or Woman's Place or Swan, that you ask them to assist in to work with the client in terms of, is that safe? You know, what's the entry and exit situation? Is it on the first floor? What route is it on? What kind of locks does it have? All those kinds of issues. If no unit is available in any of the projects that your agency controls, look elsewhere. And then, but HUD does not require that we find a safer unit if none is available. Okay, one more question. Which of the following is true? Again, they can all be true, or they can all be false. Which of the following is true about emergency transfers? The COC must have an emergency transfer policy. The COC must inform family and friends whenever a participant is moved to another unit. Or C, a participant may request a transfer due to sexual assault only if the assault took place in the last 6 months. They have to do true or false on each one of these. Okay, the first is true. The COC must have a policy, and we passed ours, I want to say 3 or 4 years, whatever we figured out, we're supposed to have one of these things. Then we did it and we brought it to the board and passed it. Our policy is based on a model policy that HUD put out, but it's not exactly the same, and we're gonna get to that soon. Must the COC inform family and friends? No, that is false. That's a breach of confidentiality. And why in the world, if somebody is fleeing domestic violence, would you tell their family and friends where they've gone? That would be a severe breach of confidentiality. In fact, the emergency transfer policy that we have here stresses the need for confidentiality. Only those who absolutely need to know where that person lives are told. And finally, the model policy that HUD puts out does restrict this to only 6 months. So it says if the sexual assault, only if the sexual assault occurred on the premises there within the past 6 months can the person request a transfer. We said, no, that is not trauma informed. That does not recognize that the trauma from a sexual assault can last way beyond 6 months. So we changed our policy, very quickly and said, no. We take away that time restriction. So that is false. So that's our quiz. I'm wondering, did anybody get them all? Don't be shy. Ooh, we have to do this again next year then. Thank you. I have finished. Cindy, do you have anything you want to talk about?
I have nothing I want to talk about. Oh, I think you're ready for that.
If the applause isn't for me, it's because Cindy is done.
Well, I was gonna say, thank you, Fred, right? So lunch is here and it is ready, so everyone needs to eat before they leave. But we are going to we have 3 more door prizes. So Fred's going to,
Let's draw this in.
if he draws his own name, he's gonna put it back.
I am.
Fred, no.
Devin,
Devin.
McElroy, McHenry.
Oh,